Sam Ronan and Eric again. We're here to talk about the top 10 comic book movies. But before that,
remember to like, share, and subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications. Also, if you like the music in the background, remember to check the email link in the description below, as well as our socials at eflesh777 and Sound Ronin. Alright, guys, so like Sound Ronin said, we're going to talk about 10 comic book movies. We're going to take off this mask because it's actually kind of hard to talk with.
as we reveal our top 10, we will reveal.
As we review our top 10. But we just wanted to, keep around the topic of comic books and movies. And we'll get Iron Fist and Iron Man. It's a coincidence that we both got Iron at the beginning, but at least, we got it, right?
All right, let's get into it.
All right, so for number 10, we have
Blade. See, one of the few black superheroes that you kind of see throughout like any of the movie franchise, like other than like Black Panther, and that's not you don't really get much, so definitely made it to the top 10.
I feel like if you think about it, Blade is probably either the first or one of the first superhero comic books. They're black superhero comic book heroes. I'm not sure, like we get a movie, but I'm not sure if Spawn was first. But yeah,
well, can we consider Spawn like more of like an anti-hero?
I mean, sure, but isn't Blade too? Like,
True,
it's not.
true.
Yeah, so at least he's a really badass one. So badass, in fact, that they changed the comic book character to look a lot like Wesley Snipes, because he was like completely different character before they adapted it to screen. And well, once you go Wesley Snipes, you can't really go back to another look, right?
That's true.
All right, so for number 9, we have Hellboy 2: The Golden Army. This one was kind of hard for us to pick between Hellboy 1 and Hellboy 2 because they're both great films. I just feel like the reason Hellboy 2 is a lot better is because we have to get a lot more of the world surrounding Hellboy and a lot more of the fairies and the whole system of the magical world within. And I feel like Guillermo del Toro's creatures are crazy in this movie, and it's just so great. And it has a lot of like darkness to it, like Mike Mignola's original comic, right?
Right, exactly. Like you said, all the magic's included in the whole realm, so it's pretty cool to see. Whereas the first one's more of a nostalgia feel, just it's starting off like origin story.
Yeah, but they're both really strong. And if you guys haven't seen it in a while, I recommend you to take another, sit and watch both films, like one next to the other. They're great. And it just makes me feel sad they never did Hellboy 3.
Yeah, and then like they did the reboot, and it wasn't the same.
It's not at all. Like, they got David Arbor, which is a good actor, but the script was so bad. I just feel like sorry for him, honestly. He could have been a great Hellboy. But then there's like big shoes to fill. Like, Ron Perlman is the perfect casting for Hellboy, right?
True. But let's move on to number 8.
Yeah.
Now, Spider-Man 2 definitely was a kind of hard decision as well. We just think that maybe like Doc Ock, as far as the villain, was a little bit better. Spider-Man had more of a debut in the movie instead of just Peter Parker, so it was pretty cool. And the train scene's so iconic, so still pretty cool.
I feel like the reason I like Spider-Man 2 a little more than Spider-Man 1, even though they're both good and they both are like so close to my childhood, is because on the second one you get more of Peter Parker after high school, because let's be honest, they all look like 30-something-year-olds pretending to be high schoolers. And with the second one, it's more realistic when it comes to that aspect of the life, but also him struggling with jobs and love and being a superhero altogether. So it's a great film, and definitely Doc Ock is one of the coolest villains / redeemed people in the movie, right?
Yeah, like mentor to villain. Yeah.
So definitely take a look at the whole trilogy just for the laughs of the third one. There's a lot of cool like horror to Spider-Man 2, because these films are directed by Sam Raimi, which is the same guy who directed Evil Dead. So definitely take a look at those. Okay. All right, so let's move on to number 7. All right. Yeah, Logan. I feel like this is a no-brainer to anyone who's seen all the X-Men movies. All the X-Men movies are not great. Like, if you think about it, There's probably a couple that are like good to a good watch, but they're not like great. Although Logan is probably the greatest of the whole X-Men movie universe, and I feel like Hugh Jackman is just like so good in this role, and having him old and rog and tog and like tired of everything is just a great factor to the whole movie.
Yeah, like you said, like other X-Men movie, it's great that Hugh Jackman, since he was Wolverine, like all throughout all these years, and did a great job. They carried him over, but it was cool to see like a little introduction of X-23 in there,
Yeah.
and kind of like the next generation of X-Men, and maybe a post-apocalyptic world almost. So it's pretty cool, and definitely like a lot more gory than the normal X-Men movies.
Yeah, and even the noir version, which is like basically the same movie, just black and white, is great. Also, I think we talked about this before, that the whole aspect of having realistic issues to having superpowers with like Xavier is a great like a great way to show how having superpowers in real life could be, because he has these like almost strokes that basically kill everyone around, and that's what happened to the X-Men. Spoiler alert.
Right. Like what happens after the X-Men exactly.
Yeah, and that's really cool to me. Also, this has like a western film, like it just feels like a western, and there's even some reference to it like in a movie that I think Laura is watching at some point. But yeah, definitely rewatch this movie. I rewatch it every time I can because I have it on Blu-ray, and it's just so great.
All right, next one. Batman Begins. Yeah, and I think this one was a little bit better than the other ones and deserved to be on this list just because, like, yes, everyone loves the Heath Ledger's Joker, but I think Batman Begins overall for superhero movie had a great origin story, villain, conclusion. You get a little bit of Batman, you get a little bit of him training with the League of Shadows. It's all over around. And before they ruined it with the whole voice thing, it kind of was like a nice little gem to have there. So
Yeah,
definitely, yeah.
the voice thing, it's so like, even though I like the Dark Knight Return, the Batman, the Dark Knight, yeah, right, yeah, the Dark Knight. I feel like it's good. It has a lot of good things about it, like Heath Ledger. I just feel like the voice goes so wrong after the first one, and then there's a lot of elements that I'm not really like. I never liked the suit too much, but I feel like they were going for the realistic feel of it, and that's what I appreciate about the whole thing, right?
Right.
But yeah, definitely Batman Begins is really on the top 10, and I feel like it's a good spot for it. So number 5, we have Captain America: Winter Soldier. For me, Captain America is one of the best trilogies, even though the first movie is kind of weak. We all agree that Civil War is good, but the reason I feel like Winter Soldier is in this list is not just because it has like other characters in it, like Black Widow and everything, but I feel like it's just so well written, like a spy film, that it kind of expands on the whole Captain America as an agent more than a superhero, and that's what I like about it.
Yeah, and it definitely has like the time it's set in. It's like almost a retro feel to it. So it's really cool that like the way they kind of bring you back all the way from the first Avenger, and then how he came to be part of the Avengers team. So it's nice. It's like on a standalone movie point, it can hold its own. Doesn't have to be part of like the saga, which is great.
Yeah, it has a lot of rewatch value. Also, if you were not familiar with the comic books, probably this was one of the best twists ever. For everyone who read the comics, Winter Soldier was never a question of who it was. But at least if you watched the movies only, you probably had a great, surprise when you know it is that it was Bucky, right?
All right, so let's go on to the next one. Number 4, Joker. So we said comic book movies, not superhero movies. So this is definitely up here just because, Joaquin Phoenix's take on the Joker was really nice. It was definitely more of like a really more mentality take on it, where instead of like where Heath Ledger was more about chaos and just wild dog, this was more just like the anger and the anarchy kind of Joker, and this was a really cool take on this one. And talking about like real life or more realistic Batman, this is a more realistic Joker, especially like in this time. Like it's perfect.
Even though they gave an origin to a character that does not have one in the comic, at least not like a defined origin, because there's a couple versions of it. I feel like it was not only a great movie as a comic book movie, but also as a movie on its own. So I feel like Joaquin Phoenix went through a lot physically and mentally to perform like this, and that's why he earned he won an Oscar for it. And again, I feel like they're both good on its own, like Heath Ledger's and Joaquin Phoenix, but having big shoes to fill like Heath Ledger's and doing it like this, that is different, but it's also super iconic. I feel that's what nails it for me. And like you said, it's more of an anarchy feel. I feel like it's more of the Joker. Like he doesn't care about movements. Like in the Dark Knight, he says that it's not. It's about sending the message. This Joker doesn't care about any of that. He just wants chaos, right? And that's why I feel like it's so cool.
Yeah.
All right, so number three, running the top three, and it's obviously Avengers. I feel like Avengers is one of those films that when it came together, like we all saw these characters for a couple of years, like building this movie up, and then when we got to see him together, it was like the most iconic comic book hero movie ever, right? Because like there's a lot of like this never happened before, at least not successfully, right? And for
Yeah.
me, looking at them together, for me, Captain America is one of the coolest when it comes to like being the leader, but not being the strongest one. And then in this movie, you understand how they came together and why he's the one, being the leader, right? And that's what I like about it.
Yeah, and we also get the big action scene in New York, which is like crazy because the whole movie they're ramping up. Like, can they do this as a team? And when the chips are down, the Avengers came and avenged. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, and again, like that movie's so iconic, like the New York fight, that they did it again in Endgame. So that's how iconic it is.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, definitely let us know if you agree with this one being number three or it should be higher on the list. But let's go with number two.
Number two, Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, we think that this is another superhero team that's, you know, close to the Avengers as far as like popularity, but it's better as a movie just because soundtrack, the cohesion between the characters. I think it was more of a family kind of like group. They really just like got onto each other and became this whole little family now, these misfits. Whereas like the Avengers are kind of like, hey, we need some people to come, play ball real quick. It's like, all right, cool, just jump in real quick, help us out. Where this is like they kind of grow and develop, and by the end for the next ones too, it's like, oh, you kind of just see them develop even more on each other. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and like we said at the beginning, this is our list. This is what we think should be. So if you guys agree with this one being number two, maybe Avengers should be higher now for you. For us, I feel like we're probably biased because for us the soundtrack is so great. We had to put it up here. I feel like James Gunn did a fantastical job getting these characters that were basically unknown for most people, and basically rewrite them in a way that were like so appealing to everyone. And this movie was a hit, and that's what you see a lot of Guardians of the Galaxy elements in movies like Endgame, because the dynamic and chemistry between the characters is so great.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so now we go to number one, and we're gonna put a drum roll to this. Just kidding, it's gonna be us, but still.
The video.
Yeah, so let us know if you agree with number one. That is Watchmen. Again, Watchmen is that movie that came in 2008 as a movie parodying what superheroes were, and with that knowing, and if you watch it now, pun intended, it has a lot of more like symbolism when it comes to superhero movies, because this is basically parodying what superheroes would become if they were in real life. And it has a lot, like if you see The Boys, it has a little of this too, but I feel like Watchmen did it in such a great way. And also there's a lot of Zack Snyder isms that were firstly used in this movie, and now are like kind of overdone, but they were so perfectly done in this one, right?
Yeah, and I mean also the directing, like all the scenes were well thought out. Like they don't give anything away too early. I think it was really well planned, and the delivery of each character's like background, how they're living, and how they each play into each other's story while the whole mystery is unraveling in front of you. And the ending is just like it brings it all together to like boom.
Yeah, and I'm usually a comic purist. Like I don't like when they change, like if they do a plot of a comic book like straight from the page and they change some things, I'm usually not happy with it. But with this movie, they did it in a way that actually works and kind of fixes some of the elements of the actual comic book that I like. And there's, like you said, the writing is so good. There's some small details. I remember, like if you look at the scenes, they go with the minutes to midnight clock for where we're ending, right? And there's every scene, if there's a clock, you will see the clock getting closer to zero. So I like the whole like small like Easter eggs that you
All
can
the
catch.
details, yeah.
If you look at it more and more and more, you will find like all these details. And also Watchmen, for me, fight me on this if you want, but Rorschach and Comedian are the best characters in the whole movie.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Rorschach definitely holds it down. He like practically narrates. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I like the duality of Comedian. Like he's good, but he's also like broken, right?
Yeah, but definitely number one in our books, Watchmen. So let us know if you agree, disagree, or you have recommendations.
All right. So now, when you say recommendations, it's funny you say that because as you guys have seen in our last videos, we have our honorable mentions, and we also have in this one. So for our first honorable mention, we have Batman.
Batman. Now we think that we should put this in here just because this is kind of where it almost all started. When we first saw it on like live action, and that's kind of like Batman growing up, and what kind of set off all these comic book movies, because back in the day there weren't really any comic book movies, period. And this was like one of the first attempts, and it was just, whether it holds up till this day, but definitely a classic just to watch to see where Batman all came from.
Oh, for sure. And also, like you said, it revived the whole superhero genre because there were like Superman movies before that, and I think there was a couple of Marvel pretty bad movies with Lou Ferrigno as the Hulk and stuff like that. But this movie basically revived the whole genre. There were a lot of movies for superheroes coming after this, and it inspired a whole dark universe, you could call it. And then even the soundtrack for this movie was the one they used on Batman the Animated Series, which is top three of my shows of all time. So it's a lot of good things coming out of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So for number two honorable mention, we have Dread. Dread for me is one of those movies that are really underground and not known a lot. So this is more of a recommendation for me because I feel like this is a great urban representation of a French comic book character called Judge Dredd. It's basically a post-apocalyptic dystopian future where police officers are basically doing judging and even executioning people based on what they do. But the way it's done is basically Batman as a cop. And he's trapped in a building with a lot of bad people, and he's just trying to come out of it alive with his partner. So it's really good. You should definitely watch this one. It's my recommendation.
Yeah, definitely a little bit grittier, darker tone to it, but it's pretty nice.
Yeah, it's
Definitely
really good.
must watch.
Also, Lena Headey from, like, if you guys know her from Game of Thrones, is Cersei. She is the villain in this movie, so I feel like she probably got like the guys in Game of Thrones saw her in this and they were like, "Oh, this girl has some spice."
We need her.
Yeah, we need her. All right, number three honorable mention.
Now, honorable mention: Spider-Man: Homecoming. Now, we think this needs to be mentioned, just because, as far as iconic, it doesn't hit as hard as the Spider-Man 2 film, but we think that this one, Tom Holland has a really great performance just because Tobey Maguire had a really good Peter Parker vibe down. Andrew Garfield had a really good Spider-Man vibe down, but I think Tom Holland brings both kind of vibes together and really gets the essence of Spider-Man, because Spider-Man's this nerdy kid, but then what is Spider-Man without his quips when he's not Peter Parker? He's like stopping the day, making fun of the villains, and just like coming in the last minute, but then he's like this nervous teenager. It's like, I think Tom Holland gets both the best of both worlds and really brings it home. So definitely honorable mention worthy.
Yeah, and you get the sarcastic Spider-Man and the nervous Peter Parker, so it works perfectly. Like, it doesn't feel like two different people either, which is great. And
Exactly.
and also I like the whole aspect of him not having the suit for the first more than half of the movie, right? Just using he has to use the fight the Vulture without the suit, which has a lot of like symbolism of him not being ready to be Spider-Man yet. And yeah, it's just great. Also seeing him in his high school years and actually look like a high schooler is what I
Right.
think it works.
Right. Perfect timing. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So number 4 honorable mention would be Kick-Ass. And well, Kick-Ass is one of those movies that is great because it puts this reality tone to a superhero movie. That is basically what would happen if people would actually become superheroes in the real life, and well, it will go south really quick, right? And that's what I like about it, because he's like all clumsy and he keeps getting beat up, and there's like not a lot that he could do like big stakes because it's just one guy fighting like muggers on the street, but then he meets these people like Hitler and Big Daddy that they're like actual superheroes, and he has a lot of like him like getting to know that life and getting betrayed. I feel like this movie is so good because the writing is good, meaning, right?
Yeah, but also I think it's like an underdog story where like zero to hero, where it's like, he tries to fake it and make it, but he's gonna get himself killed, but then he actually gets trained by like these assassin level people and he actually, becomes his own hero. And it's pretty cool because like then you see goes on to kick ass too, and just tons of action packed stuff, and you just see more heroes and villains now. So it's
Yeah,
really cool.
and always having Nick Cage go crazy with his characters is great.
Yeah.
And like you said, Kick Ass 2, Aaron Taylor Johnson gets ripped for Kick Ass 2, which is incredible too. And funnily enough, both of Quicksilvers are in this movie.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, definitely our honorable mention number 4, Kick Ass. Definitely watch both movies together. They're good pack as well for evening with your loved ones. All right, so I think that's it for our list when it comes to our top 10 super comic book movies, right?
Yeah, so if you guys agree, disagree, again, drop a like or comment and let us know if you think we should check out other movies instead and it should be on the top.
Oh yeah, for sure. Let us know what movies we should watch, or if you think our order wasn't as good as it could have been. So definitely let us know. Also remember to check our socials, follow the channel, share with your friends. That helps with the algorithm, and definitely stay tuned for our next upcoming videos. We have a lot of top times coming.
Yeah, so always thanks again for tuning in.
Stay blessed.
Grinding my whole life. Stop that. Grinding my whole life.